I'm that girl who's had a conversation with Jesus this morning, as apparently I do often when I think about that guy. Because he comes into many sessions, private and public, and today is the first Easter Friday, where I actually have an actual relationship with him to be able to think about him today and think, oh gosh, this is an interesting day. How are you feeling is basically what I said. And I just kind of, for some reason, just felt very relaxed in my bed as I was pondering and asking, guys, is there anything that you want me to say to them today? And Jesus popped in and said this. But beforehand, I felt like my teams were really busy. And so I was like, sweet, I'm going to just have my second cup of coffee in bed and hang out with the kids, right? And just wait until the sun actually rises because it's still pretty early here. So there's that. And so then I was just sort of thinking about Jesus and the experiences I've had in sessions with him, especially with the crucifixion day and what we learned about the Roman soldier and all that sort of stuff, right? So here I am thinking, sweet, I get to just relax and do nothing today and be a lazy bum, I was going to say, but So anyway, I could feel Jesus coming in quite strongly, and he said, I want you to ask them this. If he was alive today, what would you be doing? Would you be following him? He really wants you to seriously think about that, regardless of whatever you think he is, or has been, or whatever your state of relationship with him is. You can still call him sweet baby Jesus like I do, because, he's kind of iconic, regardless of whether we want to believe into the religions of it or whatever, right? We can just remember that he was a human being who's had other lifetimes, and he played the role of Jesus, and he had a significant message, and he needed to have a whole lot of impressive things happening around him for people to really pay attention, because beforehand they were just, a hot mess, really. And they kept becoming a hot mess, and hey, look at today, isn't this a hot mess situation? And I say that with love, but it's really interesting. So he was sort of saying, what would you guys do if he was alive today? And I sort of thought, well, what would you be doing? Like, would you be like on Instagram or like on Facebook? And he's like, well, potentially I could be, for those people who are still doing this crazy thing and promoting love. Ugh, loving everyone. Ugh, it's a chore. It's hard work, especially those prickly cactuses. So anyway, and I just sort of thought, well, seriously, if you were here and you're trying to convince people you're still alive, like physically here, I think lots of people would be giving you lots of glasses of water and be like, do that trick, with the water, do that trick, make it wine. And I was like, well, yeah, how could you explain that? What was happening there? I don't know very much about him, but for some reason that sort of popped into my head. Apparently, the rumors are you were quite handy with the wine, with the water. What was going on there? And he was like, well, yeah, the power of water. And I'm like, yeah, but we just love it. And then we don't get drunk off it. And he's like, but I focused on it so much because he was just love. He knew the power, the severe power, the profound power of love and high frequency. And so it's like he supercharged the water. And when you're in that density, if we just, I don't know, let's just pretend we create this time machine, right? And we physically move ourselves to the time of Christ in the bodies we are now. We are so high vibrational, we would appear to be illuminescent, glowing beings. Even though we're in the 3D, the range of what's going on and how different we are, we would appear quite different in many aspects, right? Not just our clothes, our accents, you know, our obsessive need to like sanitize our hands, and we would be looking around and judging the crap out of everyone, right? While we are just like having a day trip to see what Jesus's house looked like and the people he lived with, and were you really fucking Mary? Because a lot of people still think he was, right? And he respected her so much, he didn't want to actually own her. And if you have a wife, you'd own her, and then she would have to be like a housewife and do a whole lot of stuff. She couldn't then be her own independent leader to be able to support other people with her high energy frequency that she could call in. And they both were like, I guess in like my terminology, like they did like really high advanced Reiki stuff, right? So they knew what to do with energy, and they knew how to heal people and support people and be able to use like, you know, real strong metaphysics to be able to actually get to the cause and the problem of what was happening for the people at the time. So if we did time travel back, we would sense that it's quite a different energy. And it just reminds me of a session I did where I got to experience different parts of my life really fast in different areas of time. And I felt all this different range of energy and density, which really surprised me, because I just thought, no, I've always felt like this today. Today, I've always felt like this, right? You just assume. And really, when they just zoom me back to all of some really full-on times in my life that I've experienced and overcome, it was like, oh my gosh, it was so intensive, those energies at that time. So it's really interesting when people go back into regressions and they can feel a shift in energy too. Like they intuitively and distinctively know this is an earth. There is people here, there's humans here, human looking people here, blah, 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 blah. We've got houses, we've got relationships, so I'm working, but this is definitely not earth. And they can intuitively know that there is just something very different about the senses of it. And we can just confirm with the subconscious, yeah, that was a different planet. So, you know, fascinating, right? So if we zip back to him in his days, we would physically look different because we are at such a higher frequency rate, right? And we're constantly upping the game. We're constantly upgrading these little meat suits to be able to help assist with our soul essences, with our consciousness, to be able to expand and get back to our fuller version of self, or our smaller next Russian dolls version of us, right? So wherever that may be, was trying to still upgrade ourselves. And the density of the body really densifies our consciousnesses, right? It's a real struggle and challenge sometimes, because when we have got a lot of physical trauma from memories and past, either this lifetime or others, it's really hard to kind of expand the consciousness when you're physically holding on to a lot of density. So it's kind of, you know, that seesaw thing. And so you're noticing right now, a lot of people are feeling very, very, very depressed. This is a big thing. They've just come from a week of exhaustion to now a week, well, they're fearing a week of depression. And it's very unusual for them, and they can't understand why they have dipped into this density. And we know, if you listen to the sessions that we've just done, the collectives have just helped a huge amount of people who have been addicted to drugs, not just those people who have had drugs in their systems that have connected them to a denser collective, but also I felt and tapped into people whose parents were doing the drugs. And so, you know, you have some experimental times, and then, you know, you have this connection, then you seed and sow your children. And, you know, I'm wondering if energetically they are still connected into that cabling, that energetic density. And so it's interesting. Do you have to do, say, for example, because we were talking about meth, but I know it's a lot of other different drugs as well. Did you have to be the person to inhale or do, it's inhale? Okay, I'm not street smart, but however one uses meth, that would be the connection. Now I was wondering if you did have kids and if you conceive children in it, how would that affect them? And we do remember from that session with Stacey where there was that little girl who heard in her her head to push someone, and she listened to the voices in her head and she heard that it was them. So we know that little child hasn't done meth, but we know that when that child was conceived in the womb, there was that drug being consumed. I think I recall that. So, no judgment, but that child has been released, that parent has been released, all those parents have been released. So how does it look for them? And we know that when you suddenly have a detachment and you are starting to process and heal, there's a lot of density around, right? So I think we've already heard that, so I don't feel like I need to mansplain it because we're talking about Jesus today. So so anyway, I feel like I've distracted myself many times trying to explain what's going on here. So if he could tap into really high frequency and be able to retune, refigurate water, and to give people a sense of a high, which I guess is what alcohol does, right? It gives you a little bit of a buzz. So if he has infused water so profoundly and sort of like to today's standards of water, that's interesting. If we went back to his time and drank ordinary water versus coming back here and drinking this type of water, how would we feel? Like, how would it be? So that's interesting. So maybe I need to explore these all in sort of sessions or not, depending on, where my curiosity leads to. So that's where what he's trying to say about the wine is that it was just super frequency. So he couldn't physically transmute water into grape juice that's fermented. It was just such a high elixir of vibrational energy, which was in the water, that they got a little bit tipsy. And so I'm like, well, that's going to encourage a lot of people to drink water and really supercharge that water, because I know that a good glass of water can actually make you feel a lot more better and lot more energized than, say, a coffee, right? So sometimes I drink decaf. So anyway, it's not a confession time for Joe. Okay, so getting back to what he really wants you to think about. If he was alive today, what would you do? What would you need from him? Would you need him to do these tricks for you to be like, do something else? I've already got my own wine casket. Don't need you to do that kind of parlor tricks. Do something else to really fucking impress me, Jesus, because I'm not going to be interested in following you or even trusting what you're saying or even doing or applying what you're saying unless, you make it worth my time. Because we are sort of quite skeptical, aren't we? We would want him to like fly, do miracles, create a unicorn, like a whole lot of stuff, right? We would assume that he needs to do a lot of fucking good tricks for us to be like mildly impressed, because we wouldn't take it on his word. Right? We wouldn't ever take it on his word. He's like, I'm Jesus again. Hey guys, it's been a while. Love everyone, have compassion, don't judge anyone. We're all brothers and sisters here. What else would he say? Well, he's quite impressed that there is at least one day that we're not, materialistic whores, he's saying. He's a little bit like that today because we can't buy anything today, right? So, the shops are closed because we're such addicts to materialism. So it's like, well, that's quite nice, because that's really what he was sort of seeing is, businesses starting to corrupt people, and that it should have been this beautiful trade, loving each other. You love to be a farmer and this fantastic, and then you share your produce, and look, a neighboring farmer who loves to do cheeses and whatever, and it was this community again, this tribe again, where we all would come in and we would do what we love to do. Everything we did was full of love and joy, and then we would gift it out to our communities and to our fellow people, and we would love everyone, and if someone was unwell, we would support them and care about them and nurture them and inspire them to get well, knowing that our children are looked after and we're safe and we're protected, and there is no competition, and it's everyone's empowering each other with just beautiful love, and everything has true integrity, and everything has compassion and consideration for all. Sounds like paradise, doesn't it? It sounds too good to be true. Lots of people will be like, oh, there will always be someone that ruins it. So yeah, there is always people that try to ruin it, right? Because they've got their own shit that they're trying to process through. So they're trying to remove themselves from their own prickly cactuses phase, right? It's just a phase. We've all gone through that phase. It was never pretty. We look back at it and we think, oh my gosh, was it really that obvious that I had all those prickles and I was a prick to everyone? And yes. It's like those awkward teenage years, right? We eventually fit it into our bodies. So anyway, gosh, I felt like I didn't have anything to say, and I didn't feel like the collectives have anything to say, but I feel like Jesus has everything to say today. So potentially I'll do a channeling with him then. He's nodding. So, okay, that's okay. Yep, got it. And so, well, do I need to mansplain then? So what he said is, it's interesting though, how, you know, on his death, everyone's supposed to be reminded of how you killed him. He's not pointing fingers at anyone. But, you know, humanity did turn their back on him, really, to let him be killed. But then I guess everyone was being killed at that point and no one stood up to the truth. Sort of sounds like now, right? It sort of sounds like anyone that's sharing the real true truth of metaphysics or spirituality without having it be fucked over with by a religious cult, monetizing caste system of, you know, elitism and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it seems really interesting. So he's kind of like, yeah, but on the extreme, the cycle of it, the duality of it is that you will buy obscene amounts of gifts and have huge feasts on Christmas on my birth, but that is to celebrate, you know, the new hope of the truth coming out, and the savior would come. I'm like, but did you save anyone really? But he says he is still saving lots of people because they call on him, and in their times of need, they will break down. It's like he's saying people don't want to ask the top man. So people don't go and call upon God or gods. Some of people will just feel okay to just talk to the sun, you know, like you don't go to the full manager, you just go to a sub manager and share your complaints about what's going on in the world. And so he says that he's very open ears to lots of people who call for him, and he will listen. But of course, you know, you're also calling out to your guides, and your guides are your, you know, brothers and sisters of Jesus, really, aren't they? So, you know, they're all very loving and supportive and wonderful. But if you do need to have the epiphany to see Jesus coming down and saying, you know, you're special, we're all one, I'm returning, you know, I'm going to sort out this shit, whatever, you know, he is a really profound epiphany, and he's so iconic that people feel when they have this profound experience, then they will go and look at his teachings and his messages, and they will, you know, find out what was really his words and his way of life. You know, he says he doesn't ever want to come back and kill people. Okay, so spoiler alert for those people who think that, you know, those people that have done you wrong are going to get it by Jesus, because he says he's not going to do that. So he's not your bully. It's not gonna sort out the shit that's happening here by killing a whole bunch of people, right? That's not. And he was really special. He couldn't have just come in like, I'm like, could you have come down as twins or triplets? You know, you could have like a little Jesus gang going on there. That could have been more impressive. But he was saying it was supposed to be just one man of flesh to be able to make everyone realize that they had the same potential to be like him, to have the same perspectives as him, and to have the same choices as him. And that's what really illuminated people, because he had such great hope and compassion for humanity, and he wasn't trying to sell everyone out. He wasn't trying to like gain popularity just to, you know, grow his social media platform. So you know, he says he still inspires a lot of people. So, you know, when you're feeling that drive and that push for pure love, to be non-judgmental and to truly, truly, truly love and empower all. And even though he's sort of like, to say the truth can sometimes have a price to pay, because when you're telling the truth, you're actually holding a lot of people accountable. And those people who don't want to be accountable for their choices and actions don't like it very much. In fact, they will give you a sign from the universe that they're not happy with you calling them out to grow up and to see things from the bigger picture, to love more people, to have no excuses for not loving all and all that sort of stuff, right? So, because when we can just accept how everyone's on their journeys and be able to love everyone, you know, that will help your own vibrations and others. Of course, it did impact him when he wasn't getting the support he needed, because, you know, he should have had so much more followers who trusted him, trusted his perception, and trusted his approach. Because if he'd actually got his way and his wish and his teachings were actually incorporated with more people, a win-win, right? A win-win. But many people didn't want to step up and be part of the solution. They didn't have the strength and courage. They didn't want to share what he was saying, because it kind of competed. People were like, well, I don't know, Jesus, you sound all good and all, but I'm listening to some other influences, and it's from the king, and they've got some soldiers, so I'm not going to go against that. You know, and also, you know, I've got a little mortgage now, and yeah, I've got some kids, and so I can't really speak the truth of loving each other, because I'm trying to have a side hustle, and I'm trying to just, you know, keep the land that I'm harvesting on, and blah 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 blah. There was no limits, and there was always abundance. When you live in the ways of Jesus, right, where you just have that connection of everyone and empower everyone and have that big group community. Plus, you know, he was wise. He did know lots of secret school information from the Essenes and from a lot of the technology from Atlantis that survived. And so, you know, he did know how to profoundly empower himself and others genuinely. You know, he wasn't a hustler. So if people had more faith and trust in him and didn't turn their backs on him, you know, things could have been profoundly different. But they didn't have faith. When they weren't in his presence, they didn't have any faith, and they didn't apply it. So, you know, oh, that's all cute for Jesus and all, because he's got, you know, the fancy robes and whatnot. But, you know, I'm just a humble farmer. How could I be of service? How could I be of help? So it's really interesting. If there was someone, if Jesus came back and said, follow me on Facebook, click and like and subscribe to my YouTube channels, would you trust him? And would you apply all the stuff that he's saying? Like, what would you do? You know, like, I'm like, well, I might sort of sign up if you did some karaoke fun stuff. That would be kind of cool to see Jesus singing some love songs to everybody. That could be cute, a little bit of Spice Girls in the mix and something else. I don't know, like, watching Jesus sing Hallelujah. Or what is the one? Amazing Grace. I think they'll get a few likes on that one. That would be fantastic, right? But what if he had like a really dodgy, do you have a good voice? Or he says he's got an angelic voice that he could radiate through. So his frequency of his voice is so intensive that it's so high vibrational that it's like smooth and silky. It's like, what is the, I don't know the person he's trying to show me, but it's like a really soulful, it's a really, yeah, it's good. It would be a good song. It would be a very good song. He would do a very good karaoke of Amazing Grace. It would be very delicious. So, but he's not coming back. He doesn't need to come back, and he's quite comfortable where he is to support everyone where he's at. And so there is still huge amounts of beings just like him who have got many missions to be able to help humanity, and they're our guides. They're fantastic, right? And we could ask our guides, what would Jesus do? What would Jesus say? And, ultimately it's always that, super sweet message, loving everyone. It can't be any more simple, right? Those words are super simple to hear. It's super simple to understand. And yet we still find to have reasons why not to apply it. We still want to judge someone for something that they did that was, ages ago. But the channeling I did the other day, where they said, do not judge anyone because you do not know what they're currently overcoming or what they've suppressed from this lifetime or others. And they were talking about verbal abuse and sexual abuse. And even at the end, they added in self-abuse. Because at some point when you have been verbally abused or sexually abused or both, when you can't release it, it actually turns into self-abuse, where you don't even need to have someone doing this abuse to you. You are constantly continuing on and looping that behavior, perceptions, and those actions potentially. So it's a lot to, cover in a little quick channeling video. And the energy was very, very, very intense. And they really, really, really wanted me to get that word really correct. So I don't know if you've noticed, but they kind of do speak quite fast when they're channeling. And it's a lot. So I accidentally said enable. And what they really pulled me out of, and they were like, focus, is not what we want them to hear today. We don't want them to hear enable right now. We want them to hear enamel, enameling, enamel. And so then they did that little mansplain explanation of it. But I think that was when they really got my attention to focus, we want this exactly right. And so when I realized that they wanted my attention because they needed me really to just slow down. They needed me to slow down so I could just hear that one word. That's when I could feel all what they were scanning through with all of the abuse from the children. And I know that even adults have been abused, but what I got to feel into what they were going through while they were seeking out what they could help and what they were healing, what they were scanning through, was just all this abuse of children. And it was like, it was so hideous and horrible. And it was just this heavy, heavy density. And it made me really emotionally react, which then is not helpful as a channeler to have that reaction, because then I'm too in the body and I'm feeling it. And so then they pushed me aside really fast just because they could get out the word enamel. I knew that they were talking about enamel and not enabling. And so, yeah, it was quite long. So when I did listen back to it, and I could feel myself getting really upset, because for me, I felt like I just bawled my eyes out. I just cried and cried and cried. And then when I listened back to it, you could hear me get really overwhelmed with it. And that's when they shut me down to not feel anything. And then they just continued on. And so it must have sounded really strange, because I was like, God, wow, that was so fast. Because for me, I just felt like I sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And I don't like to cry really, because I feel like I can cry in the privacy of my own time. But when I'm trying to do a channeling and when I'm trying to focus, and to do sessions, I'm trying to be getting the content and not have a big, meltdown. And yeah, it was really interesting when I was listening back to that session and last year of June the 9th, I think it was, when we were discovering that there was a whole bunch of children that were being kept to be consumed. And I was just listening back and thinking, oh my God, I'm hearing myself and the client subconscious talking about it's purposeful, it's all significant, these are their life contracts, this was to awaken humanity. We can all know that, and have somewhat of a metaphysical perspective and trust that, we can't save those children who had life contracts to have those experiences, because those experiences are very, very important for the soul. So, we can't do anything about that. We can't save them. And how many times have we tried to save our friends from certain lessons? And then, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until, they have to have a really big experience because they have been saved from having to trip over themselves at an earlier step. So the subconscious will come in and completely, I think it's called, what is it called in the cards of tarot? Like it's when the tower collapsing or the house burns down or something like that, like it's like this big thing. It was supposed to be the small little thing that was supposed to be manageable, but it keeps getting distracted and dismissed. And so that grows and grows and grows to get your attention, to have your grand awakening, to that experience, whatever that may be. So much to be said. So yes, lots to process, and maybe I need to actually start looking more into the words of and the teachings of what Jesus said, because I still feel pretty ignorant to what his other messages were. I've learned lots from him coming into sessions and having sort of like conversations with his soul essence, and it has been very illuminating and really interesting. I'm so glad he has humor, because otherwise well, when he loves everyone, right, you can kind of have humor with him, but it comes with respect. And he knows how much I respect him, and he knows how much I'm trying to understand more about him, especially for those people who are waiting for him to return and what that actually looks like. And again, if you are waiting for him to return, and if that gives you hope and joy, fantastic, he's returning, 100% he's returning, right? So you're definitely going to be joined back with him, and he's definitely excited about what's coming on, because he knows it's a well overdue. And we were supposed to shift into a higher dimension and have a different respect for each other way back when. And it's pretty disappointing, but also he can understand the density and the challenges that Earth has when we have been continually on the same path that those people were who shunned him and dismissed his teachings way back when. So, this isn't a new thing that humanity is trying to awaken up to, and to empower yourself and use love and respect each other, and not be in competition with each other, and really truly honor each other while you honor yourself, while you're having these earth experiences, is definitely something that we still need to be able to, have as a priority, rather than just in the weekends or just when it's special dates. So anyway, interesting times, my friends. I hope that you take lots of time to practice creating wine out of your water and see how that works for you. And yes, all is well. All is well. And love always wins. So keep on winning.